Gaskell,
Here.
Fitzgerald.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. I'm not sure if this meeting had to be noticed. Was it noticed?
Nope, there's no public.
There's no public notice. That's only with public hearings, so we're good. Okay.
It was noticed
All
as
right.
any other village meeting on the village website.
Cool. All right. The next item on the agenda is communications. First of all, I would like to congratulate Stephanie on her nuptials and just congratulations. I want to acknowledge the fact that you were married. Hope it all went well. Sounds like it did.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you.
Do we have any communications?
I
From
don't
you?
have anything now. I do have something for good of the order later.
Okay.
Paula.
Paula, yeah.
Yeah, Paula, thank you, Barb. Paula recently had surgery, so she's out on medical leave for the next few weeks and will be recuperating. So please send your well wishes for her. I'm sure she'll be back at it real soon here. She's worked her baby, but I think she's doing well. And if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to direct them toward me or Barb, and we can get anything answered for you.
Cool. All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the July 13th, 2017 special meeting with the Plan Commission. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion on the matter? Seeing that there is none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes from the July 13th meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We also have the July 27th, 2017 regular meeting minutes before us tonight. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes from July 27th, 2017? Seeing that there are none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the July 27th, 2017 meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 1 on the agenda, and it's a lengthy item, but the only item on the agenda tonight is a workshop looking at the text amendments to the Village of Tinley Park zoning ordinance, Section 2 and Section 3 related to fence regulations. I believe, Stephanie, do you want to start with the staff report?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Fitzgerald.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start off by saying, I think a few of you might have seen this presentation before. It's going to be relatively similar to what we did last year or earlier this year. I can't remember when it was, but we're talking about fence regulation. And the reason why I wanted to bring it to the ZBA first is because you all are the ones that see fence variances. And as you know, typically they are for corner lots. And if you look through Section 3 of our zoning ordinance, I also included those current regulations in the packet for you, kind of to show you a snippet of what the current regulations are versus what we're proposing with the amendments. But you'll see that there's not a whole lot of depth there to the regulations, and we don't really regulate much other than a little bit of the location, and the building code actually calls some height restrictions as well as the zoning ordinance with the 6 feet. So we wanted to go into depth a little bit more, and we wanted to clarify things a little bit better with fences, and hopefully have less people asking for variances from the code. We love seeing you guys, but I know sometimes it can be difficult to weigh in on those variances, and sometimes they're not always merited. So we want to try and go through these and get your feedback on what you think about fence locations and the different regulations that would apply to fences. So some of the things we'll talk about, as you saw in your packet, are location, height, style, materials, and we did make some draft definitions for different terms that are related to fence location, the height of fences, different lot types and yards, just to further clarify those different regulations and improve the zoning ordinance.
But we're not seeing that.
Do you have any screens where we need them there?
He's got the staff report, yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Okay.
Am I supposed to see that? No?
No, if you want to do the PowerPoint, you just click your thing here.
The black switch.
Do you have to be so technical?
Thing, yeah.
Spell thing for me.
Everyone good?
Good.
Thank you.
So, like I said, we'll talk about where the fences should go, the heights, styles, the materials, the definitions that we've drafted. Another thing we want to talk about is administrative variations. So what the zoning board feels is comfortable for staff to regulate administratively. You'll see in the current code, staff has up to 10 feet that we can limit on what we call the secondary front yard for corner lots. So on a corner lot, you'll have the address side, and then you'll have this other front yard, which most people think is a side yard, but it's really a front yard because you wouldn't want to be building your house on that side all the way up to the sidewalk. But we do have currently administrative powers up to 10 feet to go in that other front yard with the fences. So that doesn't always work out nicely for the person next door because of somehow the way that the lots are laid out. So we want to talk about that as well. And if anything raises a question in your mind while I'm talking, feel free to raise your hand. This is an interactive workshop, not just a presentation, so feel free to ask. The last thing, we'll just go through the draft text amendment. Hopefully that'll be pretty quick. And like I said, feel free to weigh in on these issues as they come up. We can get that input. So first we want to talk about the where. And I have this great diagram that I made quite a while ago now. Let's show you on the screens. And you can see here, I try to do some color coding, and it looks a little crazy at first, but once you read into exactly what the lots are, you can see there's the lot, which is defined by those sort of dotted and dashed lines, and then they're labeled different lots in the white area, which would be sort of the leftover buildable envelope area. And then you've got your front yards, your side yards, your rear yards, and they're all color coded. So here the important part is I want you to look at the orange yards. And let me know if you're colorblind here and I can point on the computer. But the orange yards, what's important to know is that's that secondary front yard on corner lots. And that's where we have the trouble with the fences usually, is that secondary front yard. And that's where you kind of get into this rhythm of, okay, you've got all these yellow primary front yards, and then all of a sudden you have this orange secondary front yard. And when you let a fence go further out in that orange yard, and then your fences adjacent to that and all the yellow front yards don't line up, you get this sort of weird aesthetic look. Because you have one person whose fence goes out farther than the next person can ever go. So you don't really get the consistency. So what we're sort of proposing is that when staff would look at these types of fences and when the ZBA looks at these types of fences, we're hoping that we'll only see those fences in the front yard in the situations where two orange yards are next to each other, which is what you see on the right side of the graphic. Because those won't really interact negatively together. You're going to have the same condition where both people could go out 10 feet or whatever it may be, and you're not going to have one person going farther than the other potentially. But you can see where on the left side of the graphic, there's not two orange yards next to each other. There's orange yard surrounded by a bunch of yellow yards. And the yellow yards and the orange yards aren't going to have the same standards for the fences. So, Jim, you have a question?
Nope.
Okay.
Not yet.
Let me know if I'm losing you here.
The yellow primary front yard is always where the address is?
No, that's the other problem, is sometimes the addressing is wrong, and sometimes you'll see there's an address for a house, and the front door is not even on that side. So the person doesn't even recognize that as being a place they would enter the house. And that really confuses the pizza guy sometimes. So it's not perfect, and the code right now is written addressed yard and non-addressed yard, as far as what yard's allowed to have that extra 10 feet. And it's not been perfect when we've had to administer it. And so we want to change that to instead being called primary and secondary rather than addressed and non-addressed because of those inconsistencies. So thanks for bringing that up. The primary front yard would become the shorter dimension, and the secondary yard would become the longer dimension on the corner lot. Because typically lots are deeper than they are wide. So that's how it's been defined in many other communities we looked at as well. And a lot of the inspiration for some of these terms and regulations did come from other communities that we researched. So it's not going to be a perfect science either because not everyone fits the mold, but I think in one of those instances it would be appropriate to bring a variance request to you guys to review. So we can't write code for everything, unfortunately, but we're sure gonna try and make a better one. So any questions about this diagram or any thoughts on where you think fences are appropriate? Do we think fences are appropriate in any front yards at all, under any circumstances? I think in our draft here, we talked about certain conditions that we're requiring for that type of fence location. If you look on the draft amendment, if you have that in front of you, on page 4 of 10, we have section number 3 called fences and secondary yards.
We have that in front of us? We're supposed to have a packet in front of us?
No, it's on your computer there.
Okay, that's good.
The packet.
Go back to PC though, right?
Yep.
Go back to your PC real quick. And you can see the requirements.
What page again?
4 of 10 in the text amendment. So in this, it will be page 16 of 22 on the PDF. Toward the bottom of that page.
Said page 4?
In the PDF, it's page 16 of 22. Because you've got more than just the stuff.
That's what.
Well, my section, it's got the draft section, it's got page 4 of 10.
Yep, that's exactly. Okay, so if you see that number 3, fences in secondary front yards, that's where we talked about the administrative review being required for fences in secondary front yards. And we said that the zoning administrator will be doing those reviews and will be reviewed in context with the surrounding area and must meet certain requirements. And if the zoning administrator denies a proposed location, then it has to, that appeal would go to the zoning board. The requirements are the property must be within a residential zoning district, so this would only apply to the residential properties, not the commercial properties. It says the fence must be consistent with the aesthetics of other fences in the surrounding area. The fence cannot cause a negative impact to the safety of pedestrians or vehicles. And if you'll remember, in some of our cases, that was a concern because it would be a 6-foot-tall privacy fence by a driveway or right by a sidewalk with no dog ear to really see around it. So that would take care of some of those concerns. It says it cannot abut a neighboring front or primary front yard. So that's where you see the yellow yard and the orange yard. It would only be allowed to abut another secondary front yard, which is what you see on the right side of that image we were looking at on the PowerPoint. And it can be a maximum kind of 4 feet 6 inches at the top of the posts and 4 feet at the top of the rails. Not something that we didn't really define before is what is the height of the fence? Is it based on the rails or the posts? So we wanted to go with defining both of those. And, you know, the posts typically are decoratively a little bit higher than the rails. And the fence must be open or decorative in style and have a minimum of 50% open space between the rails and the posts. So that's very much like what the zoning board and the village board have approved in the past for many of these front yard fence variations. Where we've required 4-foot open style fences so that we don't get those 6-foot-tall stockade fences in someone's front yard, which really aren't very inviting.
You're talking the primary front yard, the
This is for the secondary.
secondary, okay.
So this is for that orange yard you're looking at. And the permitted location associated, if you go to the next page, is a fence meeting these requirements may be permitted subject to the administrative review to encroach up to 10 feet into the required front yard setback. So that doesn't change. That's the same as the current code, but just note it says up to 10 feet, and our current policy has been not to just automatically always give 10 if, you know, they can get by with less than that to achieve what they're wanting to do. But we do want to note that if they're trying to line up with someone who already had 10 feet, that's probably aesthetically going to be the best choice. And then also in the instance that a residential structure is non-conforming to the required front yard setback, meaning the required setback is 25 feet, and that particular house is set back 8 feet instead of 25 feet because it was built in 1910, then it may be permitted, subject to administrative review, to have a fence along with where the house is. We know we've gotten some of those variance requests where the house is here and the code says the fence would have to go here to meet code and it's halfway into their backyard. So it doesn't really make sense, and it would avoid that scenario having to come to you, basically. And I've got an image, if you want to flip back to your PowerPoint, I can show this. This was a variance a few years ago, and pardon the rough diagram, my diagrams have improved a little bit over the years, but this was a home that was set back 8 feet 3 inches, and it was built in the early 1900s. And all they wanted to do was have an open style 4-foot fence come out right up from the corner of the house. So the current code you see would have been at that 25-foot setback line, which is that pink dash line sort of in the middle of the house. And it seemed like this one was kind of a no-brainer to approve it aligning with the house. So in order to make that process easier, this would allow this scenario potentially to be approved administratively. And here's a look at the home. It's been improved since the 19-somethings, obviously. And you can see there that it really wouldn't have an impact on that adjacent home, the White House off to the right there, because it would just be between this house and the garage. So if you're comfortable with this type of scenario being approved administratively rather than having to go through the entire variance process, coming to the zoning board and subsequently the village board for an ordinance approval, that would save about 3 months of the petitioner's time and allow this type of thing to be approved administratively.
Completely comfortable with that.
Absolutely.
I know we do have a lot of these older homes, and all they're looking to do is align with their house, and it's been very frustrating for some of them in the past to be told that they can't do that for at least 3 months because we have to take them through a public hearing process and all these meetings. So I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate that. Another thing we talked about in the past, and this is the last thing in this administrative review section, and it's highlighted, is allowing them on the property line along certain arterial roads based on speed limit. So this is the scenario where you've got a property that's along 171st Street, and that's their secondary front yard. So we've got a guy who was off of Fox Grove and 171st, and he wanted to replace his fence right on the property line, right on 171st, a foot away from the sidewalk there. And everyone else's fences went along that same line, and he just wanted to put his fence in line with everyone else's. In that particular scenario, his variance was granted, and a lot of the time we do allow the 6-foot tall closed privacy style fences because you've got a busy street right next to you with cars going 45 miles an hour being the speed limit that we all know, much faster sometimes, and a lot of noise from that as well. So we can do some more research on the speed limit and the fencing correlation, but I was wondering if we want to open up any sort of administrative regulation based on that, or if we still wanted to have that as a case-by-case basis that comes to the zoning board and village board.
I think there's 2 streets that come to mind right away, and one is 171st, and the other is 183rd, the new going all from Harlem all the way to LaGrange. It's 2-lane traffic on both sides, and it's 40 miles an hour above for, I think, all of it.
I think some parts of 167th Street qualify for that too, east of Oak Park.
Yeah, so if it's, I think one of the things, one guideline perhaps maybe is 2 lanes of traffic on each side,
So
40 miles an hour or greater.
Okay.
I think that's a good start. I don't know if that's
Okay.
something have you guys thought about that or not, but
Okay. Do you think it's worth trying to write a code specific to that, or do you think it's something that needs to be looked at by the ZBA?
I mean, what do they allow now? Like off of 171st Street, you've got a lot of fences are built up right there, and they all line up together.
So the thing is, if it's a person's rear yard,
Mhm.
it's allowed. It really should never have been allowed like that, because then you end up with you don't get tree-lined streets, you get fenced-up streets, which is what we see commonly along those roads along 80th Avenue as well. And it's not the most aesthetically pleasing look. So that's just a subdivision design flaw from when it was built. But what's allowed right now is if it's your rear yard, it can go all the way up to that rear lot line. But in the case of a person on a corner lot, a lot of the time that's their secondary front yard. So you'll see that they're addressed off 171st, they're addressed off the street right inward, but they want to put their fence out where everyone else's rear yards are. And that person lived on Fox Grove and 171st is a prime example of that particular fence. And if you'd like, I can pull that up on our GIS and you can see that scenario if you'd like.
I think that, like, you just brought up another, 80th Avenue between 159th and 171st Street, correct? That's what we're talking about.
Even further south.
Yeah, it's just all the different fence types. It does start to look aesthetically junky, actually. It looks like junk sometimes. And I don't know, that's a good point. How do you regulate colors? How do you tell people that they can't have a certain color fence? You're saying neutral, natural colors. I mean, if you look at all the Minwax stain colors that people can stain wooden fences, if you go to Menards and look at all of them, how are we going to tell people that you can't make it like that raspberry color because it matches their brick in their house? How do we do that?
I think that was more along the lines of you don't end up with a bright purple fence or a lime green fence.
Then we better put
With
colors that are
local
we better put allowed colors then.
Yeah.
I mean, as opposed to, so there's no discrepancies. I mean, yeah, purple, green, paisley, we want to not do that. But
You can get as specific as you want, and
Then you-
fence color is not protected by the First Amendment last time I
the
checked.
colors, I think material is not as important as color.
Okay.
Because basically vinyl, you've got not many choices. It's white or it's tan. I'm sure you can get other ones, but if somebody finds a gray vinyl fence somewhere, who's to tell them they can't do it? I mean, it's kind of hard. So I think we should make a color list.
Okay.
These are allowed.
Maybe you could make a color list, and then if somebody says they want to do a different color, then it has to come to a hearing. And maybe that 3-month thing will make them change their minds.
Okay.
I've seen purple fences.
I have some purple fences.
I've seen purple fences with people painting caricatures on them. And it's art. They consider it art. So I'm not going to say, we can't say, you can't do that. But if you have a fence thing saying, no purple fences, uniform color, things like that. And I just noticed this too, just not to change this color, but since when is chain link prohibited?
Well, that's something we wanted to discuss. We spoke to some of the other staff members and a trustee, and we were wondering about materials. And I know we talked about materials in our last conversation as well. And some felt that chain link may be considered to be prohibited in order to raise the bar for the aesthetics.
With new construction? Or all replacements? No chain link?
It would be no more chain link. There would be no more new permits for chain link, I think is how this is currently written. If it needs to be phased in, it would be a little complicated, just because you would say, oh, well, you have a brand new fence, you can't have it, or, you have this fence and you can replace it. You would have to say, you can repair it, for a certain extent. I think we put some repair clauses in the ordinance here, but it would be tough to really choose who could replace in full versus build new,
Sure.
if that makes sense. So it really wouldn't be grandfathered other than replacement of small sections.
So how do you deal with somebody that says, well, I don't have $10,000 to put up a vinyl fence. I have $1,000 to put up a chain link fence. Then the problem's gonna happen with people. People already, like on 80th Avenue, piecemeal their fences back together because it's so expensive to replace. And it is outrageously expensive for a full yard to replace. And on the outside rear yard, you got people putting 2x4s, bracing the fences back up. And it looks terrible from the outside, but maybe it looks better from the inside. I did it. I'm one of those people that mine
And
wasn't
you're also got to consider, then you said it could repair and not replace. What constitutes a repaired chain link fence? To me, it would be taking all of the chain down and putting that back up and not moving the post. Does that constitute a repair or a replacement?
Maybe
That
we'd
could be
have to
sticky
get more in
territory.
detail on that. What I'm looking for is your recommendation as to whether you think it's a good idea or not to include it as a prohibited material. Because that was suggested to staff to put in there.
I will say this, my house has fences on both sides. Consequently, they're mine. they're all chain link. And because I have a really good relationship with both sides of the neighborhood, if I was ever gonna replace that and had to put something else in, number one, the expense would be horrendous. And number two, there's that certain stigma, oh, you're putting up wood because, you know, if it's not a front or backyard, if it's a side yard between houses, I don't know if you have to be so tight. I'm not a fan of chain link, I'll tell you that right up front, but the difference in the cost effectiveness is pretty striking.
I have to say, I agree with the commissioner. I've got chain link on both sides of my houses in Radcliffe. I tied it in with a vinyl, post one, if you will. They're 4 foot high. I can see through them. I can visit. I can do whatever. They're more visible. I don't really have a problem with them. I mean, if as long as they're repaired. That's my whole issue with any fence. If we enforce the repair and replacement and whatever, then I've got no problem. But they are cheaper and they do the job that we need them to do.
And
I'd also
the
like
dogs
to
bark at one
issue.
another.
I'd also like to address at some point dog runs that pop up next to houses that are 20 by 25 or whatever, or 15 by 15 or 10 by 10 even.
Okay.
You know, 'cause those are all fenced and they're all blockade and stockade fences and high or whatever, and I don't know if we should be allowing those in that fashion.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, they pop up wherever they feel it's appropriate, so it's in the side yards, and they're usually being built without permits, and they're usually just off the side yards or whatever, and that has more impact on the neighbor, I think, in many cases, than does a normal fence.
There's a temporary structure thing.
Right.
There's code for temporary structures in that packet. Is that, there's something against those dog runs? Like that's considered a temporary structure?
Well, if it's just a
Right.
fencing, it's a fence permit.
Yeah, it's a
I mean,
fence.
you're allowed to put a fencing.
Are you talking about like removable dog runs? Or are you talking
No,
about?
I'm talking about.
They actually post them in and they.
Post them, do all
yeah.
that, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then you're telling your dog to go out there and run in the run and bark by your neighbor's house.
Right.
That's why we like ours so much, because the 3 houses, we all have dogs. They all go out and they have this community bark and everything, it's all
Bark
good.
fest, right?
We got a retention pond in back of us, who cares? Let them out and bark.
Bark a little bit.
Other thoughts on chain link?
I just think it's tough to prohibit it based on the cost.
Totally agree.
Not everybody can afford, and I'm still paying for mine. And I replaced mine a year and a half ago, so.
That's over here, where we.
No, I agree with them. I think the expense would be too much.
And purple chain link can be
Yeah.
prohibited, that's okay. You can get rid of the purple chain link.
I think you can keep the barbed wired as prohibited material still. I think
Yes.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, you don't want the spikes above the fence with the barbed wire across, yeah.
And a razor wire.
Yes.
Or the razor.
No razor wire.
Yes, that's
Only
it.
on top.
We're not trying to build Fort Apache here.
Yeah, so the things that stood out to me was basically like the prohibited material and then the colors. I think we need to be careful on the prohibiting of material. I think we need to define what colors are allowed, not just neutral, natural.
One overall question is, whatever we determine tonight or throw out, will it be reviewed by legal?
Yes.
Okay.
They will. And so the process is, after we get your feedback, we're planning on bringing this to the planning commission at their meeting next week. So if you'd like to come back next Thursday too, we'll be right here. Their meeting starts at 7 though.
Gee, they'd have public there then.
Yeah.
We'd be sitting out there.
Or you can watch on YouTube. It'll be live on YouTube or recorded to watch later if you would like to. Get out your popcorn and watch the planning commission. We do have a couple of other items on the agenda, so maybe toward the end of the night. But we will take it to the planning commission. It'll be a workshop next Thursday, and then later in October we'll get together a final draft and we'll do a public hearing. That'll be on the 5th, right? I think the 5th of October. And then after that, it'll have to go to the village board for 2 meetings. So it would be practically Thanksgiving by the time any of the curb cut changes because of the meeting schedule. So it does have to go through 4 more public meetings every minimum before we would change the curb cuts. But again, we wanted to bring it to you guys first because you deal with fences the most and that's one of your opinions and make your job a little bit easier by making the code a little bit better. So I know Chairman Fitzgerald, we talked about color a little bit, and I think you appreciated this next slide last time I showed it.
Yeah.
But just to give everyone else an idea, these are the types of things we want to decide if we would like to see or not like to see. So
string of
we've got
bicycles.
some
That's-
interesting considerations there. And I actually saw one in person while I was driving through the middle of Missouri, and I wish I would have stopped to take a picture. But I saw a fence made out of bed posts. It was like like the headboards, like someone lined up wire for like wrought iron headboards along the front. And I thought it would be perfect for this presentation. So sorry to get that for you, but you've got some interesting ones here. So I think we've covered a lot of this with the materials.
Yeah, keep glass off the allowed materials.
Mhm.
Put glass on prohibited.
Skis, prohibited.
Sharpness.
Pencils.
I think if I had a farm or a ranch, I'd like the one on the top left. I think it would fit out there. But on 66th Avenue, no.
Yeah, it's one of those modern styles, and it could be cool in a certain atmosphere. But I think if someone's even got 2-liter pop bottles on the top right there, lined up together.
So that's plastic.
Plastic. So-
How about, is there a defining term in the code for whatever fence you are replacing in your yard has to be a uniform color? Do you have instances where people try to vary colors and do 2 colors in their yard? Or-
The only instance would probably be where it's aligning with a different type of fence. Like in my yard, one neighbor has chain link and the next neighbor, their fence is wood.
No, I mean just color. If it was two vinyl fences in the same yard and they're like white at this section, I don't know if it's ever happened. But I think we should say like uniform
Okay,
color.
A uniform color.
And then if they want to do a different color to meet up with somebody's fence, that should potentially be brought to the zoning board. Or,
Okay.
you know,
So do
or
you-
is that something that you could look at and say, well, that makes sense? You want to, you know, butt up
Would
with
that
the
fall
neighbor's
under
same color.
administrative, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so are you saying that, say you live up against 80th Avenue, and there's, all the different types of fences along
Right.
80th Avenue, and you're wanting to replace your fence entirely, and the neighbor next to you has white PVC, and you're proposing to do like a tan PVC, are you saying that because your neighbor has white, you have to do white too?
I think that might get us in
That's what he
trouble.
said. but
Well,
I-
I'm thinking, well, let's see, I'm thinking with my fence, because my fence is also my neighbor's fence.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So,
Are you saying we can only improve one consistent color, because then you get the who came first?
so that's tough. I didn't think about that. That's,
So, and then you've got, another person obviously on the other side of them, and what if they have a black wrought iron fence?
uh,
So, unless we're gonna go with, I would love to do a comprehensive fence plan and say this street can only have this color and type of fence, along this property line. And that makes it easy that you can only have white PVC all along 80th Avenue or something, and your other inside pieces, can maybe do whatever else you wanted, but it would be very hard to get people to design. It would look nice though, but that would be a big step.
yeah, that's
I think legal would throw that back at you and say, yeah, you're not gonna get away with this.
Unless the village put it up.
I
So
think
what
we-
can
There you go,
we
let the
for
village put
sure?
all fences up.
What can we for sure regulate? Color,
I mean, we can say,
height,
yep.
material.
Yep,
So we'll just stick to that then.
and location.
Let people do what they want. It's their yard, but make them at least be height and.
I think we can say like, you shouldn't be doing, say you're doing individual wood panels, you've got like wood pickets or something like.
Yeah.
Like in the bottom corner here, this mirrored one, say that's actually pieces of wood, like you shouldn't be doing one painted white and then one natural, and one painted white and one natural. I think you could say each section of your own fence is one consistent color.
Section of your own fence. Makes sense.
So that, you don't get rainbow crayon fence here. So, let me see what else I have here I guess some thoughts on. Okay. Heights, really quick, I want to go through what we did here for height. Maximum height for fences in general, this is not talking about the secondary front yard. We said 6 feet 6 inches for the posts and 6 feet for the rails. And that's measured from grade. Does everyone feel comfortable with that?
Are you talking rails, the top rail, you're not talking the cut of the slats,
It would be the top of the point, I think.
The top of the post, because the posts are higher than the.
Top of the
top of the
insert.
Well, I
fence.
guess if you're doing, here, with these, if you look at the top middle one, the post you can see is still higher than the top of those little
Right.
pickets.
Well, I'm talking more the one right below that, where it's scalloped on the top.
Yep. Even in that one, you can see the post is taller, so I would say still the 6 feet to the top of where it's sort of making that arch, and then the post 6 inches taller.
Highest point of fence.
Yeah,
is
highest point of
6
fence
foot.
is 6.
Highest part of post is 6'6".
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because that looks, you know, you're saying it's still, the posts are still higher. It doesn't really look like it to me if you kind of look down.
Yeah, I can see where that one could be close.
Well, it's not 6 inches higher, but it's definitely higher, at least even by a couple inches.
With the post, I'm not
If
sure.
you're still
Russ.
looking at middle, second row.
I think the idea
Let me
is
switch.
the majority of the fence needs to be at 6 feet maximum. That's the intent of that, and there's an administrator would interpret it that way. So what's gonna happen though is every fence is usually installed with a few inches of ground room below it too.
Well, the reason I asked that is the rail is the top stringer that goes between the posts.
Yep, correct.
And that's why I asked if that was 6 feet, or are we talking the top of the fence is 6 feet? That was my question.
I think that the post is what's allowed to be 6 inches taller.
Right.
And then the remainder of the fence needs to be at that 6 feet.
So the rail, you're not talking the rail, you're talking the top of the fence, the actual top of the section of fence.
Highest
Yes.
portion of fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, highest
Should I
portion of the
clarify
filling.
that by saying
I think
the
that's-
rail?
Well, if you say the rail,
section?
you've got an argument, because the
Yeah.
rail is that board that goes between the two posts. It's
Yeah,
it's
I
like a
think
2x4
We've got to
or
talk about
whatever.
the panel or the picket.
Okay,
Yeah, a picket, if for lack of a
Yeah,
better
the
term.
picket or the panel.
so I'll say the rail slash panel. of
No,
fence?
I'd leave the
No,
rail
it's a
out of
rail
it.
at all.
The rail's that piece that goes along about, it from the middle of that
That's what
one.
holds the pickets and panels in place.
Goes like
Defined
this.
post.
The rail's here.
And,
Okay.
yeah, defined post and then defined fencing. That's different than,
Yeah.
or whatever you
Okay.
call it, panel.
So maybe
Yeah.
I'll include a graphic there that explains that.
Yeah,
So
but I wouldn't, you know, I'd include I wouldn't say rail, because they can put the rail at 6 feet,
Then they
and then extend the things another 2 feet, so I mean,
easily.
Right.
So you think panel is the appropriate?
yeah.
Yeah.
Minimize room for argument. That's what we.
Most of them have a very distinctive
good.
rail, other than that one picture.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, we do end up with quite a bit of fences in town that, you know, do have the actual vertical pieces that extend higher than what is kind of the horizontal rail of it. So
Right.
that's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, and so in this graphic here, do you have any concerns with how any of these fences look? Are there any style questions that you have? Do you consider, say, the bottom middle one an open fence? Because by this definition, it's not 50% open, so it would not be in our book qualified as an open fence.
No, it's not. By definition, it's just not. You got,
Okay.
yeah.
What is open enough? I guess we just want to make sure that we're all on the same
So-
understanding.
The one to the left.
Why would that
is-
come up, and why would people, I don't see where the argument would be on that, though. Why would somebody would come up and say, well, it's only 30% open, so they can still have it, though, right?
We've had people that we've granted that administrative up to 10 feet before, and we told them it has to be a shorter open style fence because that's consistently what's approved. And we don't have it defined
There you go.
currently as to what is open. And we've had to tell them open is 50%, and they said, oh, but you can see in, so it's not privacy.
It's not meant to be privacy.
Semi-privacy is sometimes what people consider open in other communities, and we want to make sure we define that we're all comfortable with what is open.
So then you could say, well, if you want privacy, then move it back in line with your house. You don't get the variance.
Exactly.
Period.
And that's been what the code calls for.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, that's clearly not a privacy fence. It is maybe what you call semi-private.
There's no such
because
thing
it's
as
not
semi-private.
50%.
There's no such term.
But yeah, go to the hospital someday and see if they put you in a semi-private room.
That's different.
Ah, it's different. Oh, here we go. But I mean, the one to the left obviously is 50%. This one's probably 30. It's still see-through, so you might get an argument there. Maybe that could be a variance. I don't know.
Okay.
It's not a bad looking fence, that's why I'm
Yeah.
saying that, you know.
Sure, and then could have that meeting the setback requirements, no problem. But anything we're considering to encroach into the front yard setback, we want to make sure it's locked and not open unless we've got one of those major arterial street situations.
What I've noticed in just the year that I've been on this board is that people that come in with variance requests that seem unreasonable can justify anything. And I think that if you have a rule in place, you just say no. It's not code. It's simple.
All right.
And let them do their appeals, and then we could say no, and then they could go through the 3 months, and they can go to the board and do what they gotta do. As we've already seen, that can change anyways.
I think that 3-month time thing can really change a lot of minds.
Mhm.
You know,
Well,
it's-
unfortunately, it really can't because they have to come to the zoning board for a public hearing.
Mhm.
And then the village board has to have 2 meetings.
That's what I'm saying though, if they hear about all that 4 to 5 months, if it's May and they're gonna hear it's gonna be 4 months before they can even dig a hole, that could change their minds as to what they do.
They might
They'd be
say,
more willing
okay,
to
I'll
make
take
a
what
deal.
I'll take
It's a
what I-
motivator.
It's a motivator, exactly.
And we reach that a lot in the springtime when everyone's starting to come in for permits when the snow finally melts. And it's, that's why you sometimes see an influx of variances at the beginning of the summer. When people that are trying to get things in the ground.
Pay the cable bill.
The late ones here in the fall will actually end up holding off till this most.
I got mine put in December. And it snowed the day they did it too, and they didn't care. They went in, they busted it all out and put it in. It was incredible.
As long as they can get that hole dug,
It
I
was a
don't think
mess.
you care.
It was a
Mhm.
mess
Does the
because of snow, but They got
ordinance
it done.
stop at approval of the type of fence? I'm looking at the one that's by TV somewhere.
That's
The
right.
third row on the right.
Third one down,
Yeah,
third,
which is
the right row.
That's
essentially
for
a
the
Right
mulching.
wooden fence. So
Which one?
the question is,
That's what?
can we
It's
put some kind of
Fort
wording to be maintained or kept in good working order?
Yes, I think we did do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's,
I think we have something in the property maintenance code, but I can reiterate something in this code if I'm not seeing it here. But, I remember writing it, but I'm not seeing it in here. So I have some provisions in there about maintenance.
Did I read in here somewhere that we talked about chain link, putting those slats in there that was prohibited?
Yeah, that's one of the pictures in the middle of the screen.
Right.
You want to prohibit the slats?
I'm kind of big on those, tend to be junky looking.
Seems like they get damaged really
Quickly,
quickly and all of a
yeah.
sudden.
And they don't get repaired very quickly.
You have these
Right.
missing links in them.
are you talking about those green, like things you slide in your chain link?
Yeah.
Green,
Yeah.
brown, I mean.
I look at the
White,
fence
whatever
next to
color
it.
it's
Looks
and
like
I'm
webbing
going-
a lawn chair in the
Yeah,
old
do
days.
people really still use those?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the
Trailer
fence
parks.
next to it where it's open.
They're doing
and
trailer parks,
Doing what it's
actually.
supposed to do.
Mr. and Mrs. Roper's type stuff there from Three's Company, man.
No.
That's 70s.
Actually, if you're going to mobile home communities, people still do that a lot.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see the
Well-
fence thing, sure.
My biggest issue with fencing is on corners where I can't see around the corner, where I can't see the traffic coming at me. I can't make a turn. I can't get, see through the fence to see kids, people, whatever.
Safety
So
issue.
that's my biggest issue with fencing on corners.
If
So-
you see one like that, you should tell me and give me the location so we
Okay.
can take a look at it, because our police department will actually go take a look at those line of sight issues.
Mhm.
And if needed, we can require them to, what we kind of say is dog ear the corner of the fence.
Sure.
We've done it with a couple of variances throughout the past where there's been a sidewalk or a driveway or something that,
Mhm.
would be inhibited by a privacy fence. So safety's always first, so
Mm.
we definitely want to review that. And I think our zoning administrator does a good job of looking at safety aspects when looking at fences, especially on corner lots.
The other thing I was going to say is, we used to, and I'm sure we still do, but if I do a development of townhomes or condos or not single family, we usually got required to put up a perimeter fence as the townhome development and those types of issues. So that would probably still be applicable here in the development stage for the
Yeah.
for the developer builder. And the other thing I want to talk about is commercial fencing. So, you know, I'm up on 159th by all the used cars and new cars, and it's beautiful. But the people that are butting those properties should have a consistency, and it should be pleasant enough for the dealers, if you will, or the commercial properties. But there should be some consistency along that way for the commercial properties, abutting all the residential to the.
So are you saying that, are we talking about the back of the commercial lot?
Yeah, or the sides if necessary, right.
Okay.
If they're wanting to do something on the side, I think we should be talking about
Would
it,
it be
yes.
the commercial properties fence or the residential?
Commercial, part of your,
That's something that should have been reviewed during the site planning stage of the commercial property. If fences are in disrepair for any reason, we would definitely want to take a look at that now and, you know, suggest that we repair them, and we could definitely make a recommendation of a certain type of fence.
Mhm.
But if it's not outwardly prohibited, we can't, you know, mandate a certain type of color of fence in that situation. Because if we've kind of already approved the property as it is, and it initially was built, if that makes sense. So-
the existing building is what you're
Yeah.
saying, yeah. I'm saying newer, replacement, doing whatever, just to make some consistency. I don't know, yeah. But it should be reviewed when they do the site plan, obviously.
We're all for having great consistent fences, but it's really hard to correct fences. It's easy to build new ones, it's hard to correct the whole long line.
Yeah, we're unfortunately in a go forward mode, not, we can't go reaching back and
Correct.
change the past.
We're here to make a good code going forward, so this is the time to implement some good change. If you have any suggestions for things we should look forward to doing. So, any other thoughts on any of these diagrams? Do we like the bottom right one that sort of has the stone?
Only if there's headstones behind it.
Okay.
I don't think it's a residential, but I do think it's a
It's nice.
development type thing.
Beautiful
Yeah.
fence, and
Yeah.
Yeah, if a developer what's the perimeter that fence,
Mhm.
that probably would be a very classy
Yeah.
fence.
You look at that as a classy fence around the funeral home on 94th and 179th, for example.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah, there's one at 171st and 84th around, I think that's town development.
Mhm.
It's like a big concrete wall almost. It's
Mhm.
white and blue if I remember.
Yep, white on the bottom, blue on the top. I think the homeowners in the neighborhood there like it, so. Especially against the 171st, you know.
I think when they put up Fairmont Village, and this goes back probably longer than some of you have been on Earth, that was all mandated to have fencing all around it. At the beginning, I think it was all white panel insert fencing.
Mhm.
And when they first put it up, they put that up before they put the houses up. And, you know, it's still pretty much in good shape. That was a nice look.
Well, the other nice look I will give you too is 183rd when they expanded it. And they went straight down that street with the pillars and the white
Yes.
fencing and everything. That was a class act. It's very, you know, and if we throw some trees along the parkways there, not bad looking at all. I think you have to respect the homeowners whose rear yards butt up to 80th and 84th, for example. And then you have to respect the tons of homeowners along there that front yards butt up to those streets, you know, so.
A lot of new fences that would have to be changed to make them all match. Okay. Any other thoughts about this particular slide? No? We talked about materials already a little bit. Is everyone okay with the list other than chain link? Everyone seems to
Go back to the list.
have some consensus on that, not. The allowable materials listed were PVC/vinyl, wood, wrought iron, aluminum, galvanized steel, which is for open style fencing only. Otherwise, you get sort of that corrugated metal, can almost be part of that, and the steel. And then the masonry and living fences, which is something, it's an interesting topic on its own, which is the hedges or evergreen material.
Are those permitted?
It is permitted.
Now, those could be a problem only from, I mean, my folks' house in Oakland, we had a hedgerow in the front of the house, never went above 3 or 3.5 feet, always looked nice, was always kept. But you can get some people plant hedges and just forget about them, and all of a sudden it looks like you're in Sleepy Hollow. So I think we had to be careful of the limitations on height for that. That wouldn't be probably anything that should go 6 feet high, I don't know.
Or more.
Yeah, what's interesting is we haven't regulated the landscaping. However, our current code says a fence is a structure, tree, shrub, or hedge, which is a barrier and used as a boundary or means of protection or confinement. So it's in the definition for fence right now, oddly enough. But we don't regulate landscaping, we don't do permits for fencing and fence, a hedge, or a tree. And if you go to page 8 of 10 in that proposed text amendment, the see I highlighted there this exact line for the new definition for fence. And I said, hedges, ornamental shrubs, trees, and bushes shall be considered fences for the purpose of this ordinance when placed in a manner and position to meet the intentions of a fence. And I highlighted that because we can go either way with this. We can say it is going to be regulated as a fence, or we are not going to consider it as a fence.
If it falls under the fence category, isn't it being held to the 6 foot 6 inches?
It would. It would have to follow all the same regulations of the wood fence, of the PVC fence, all of those. However, like I said, it has not been really enforced as a fence in the past. And also, if we don't regulate it like a fence, just be aware that if it becomes a line of sight issue or safety issue, we still can go in and make sure that's removed or cut down appropriately. Because we don't want anyone getting run over because they can't see around someone's arborvitae. So, the other thing too is sometimes when people plant them right along their property lines, you get things poking out on the sidewalk, and little Timmy rides his bike down and gets all these thorns in his side.
Yes, you'll say. For definition, just on your highlighted part there, you define a fence as a hedge, blah, 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 blah. But then you say, position to meet the intentions of a fence. I think you have to say of a structural fence.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So we're saying that hedges and so forth are a fence for definition purposes when placed in a manner and position to meet the intentions of a structural fence. You can't double, perhaps, have that looked at.
So what is everyone's opinion on regulating the landscaping used as fences?
All in favor of regulating landscaping used as fences.
Second.
There you go.
Is that
I'm sorry.
Just what, say no?
Huh?
Just say not allowed?
We would just say that if someone goes and plants shrubs like that, I already put in here that you don't have to have a permit, but I think it's a little difficult to regulate someone planting in their yard, and they might not really need a permit to plant. So we said in here that they wouldn't need a permit to do it. However, if we see that they do it, we'd have to go in after the fact almost and say, hey, you can't do that, or that's written. So I wasn't sure what direction we wanted to go when I wrote
That's
this.
tough.
So, yeah, it's a tough category, and that's why I highlighted some of the aspects about it on whether or not we want to consider it something we regulate.
You're right. I don't know if I'd come in and ask for a permit to plant a row of hedges along my border of my fence, or my border of my yard.
And
It's
then
true.
the problem is if you go and do that and we tell you have to take it down, then
I'm
you're gonna-
mad.
because you just spent thousands of dollars on landscaping.
Right.
So,
I mean, we could make it a requirement to get a permit for landscaping that acts like a structural fence.
yeah.
At least administratively, it could be reviewed and people could look at it and say, this is really a fence, you have to get a permit for it. But I don't know how people would know that without
Yeah,
us
would know that.
People
telling
aren't,
them.
I don't think people are, I think people that would make them that uniform, boom, 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 putting 6 bushes up right in a certain spot, they know what they're doing. They're
Yeah.
blocking it, making a fence. They're not, they're not going, oh, these look great here. No, they're trying to get some privacy. So
Right.
they know what they're doing. So if they don't maintain its own front yard, it's gotta be 4 foot, right? Maximum height of your shrubbery is 4
Well,
foot.
Yep, it would have to follow that.
Yeah, so follow the
secondary
height
front yard.
regulations and do what you want. That's my opinion on it. But, yeah, people know what they're doing with me. I've never planted shrubs that close to make it look like a fence anywhere.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it, I think people have the intent of making it a fence.
But do you think there is anything different between looking at a row of hedges versus a wood fence in the front yard? Do you think aesthetically it's more acceptable, or do you think it kind of needs to be held in the same regard? What would we rather look at?
I'd rather look at the shrubs, absolutely. Yeah.
I'll still bring up the issue, it has to be maintained, so it can't be falling over the sidewalk. It's a little Timmy.
Yeah, gosh, I don't know if people would actually want to do that, because you do have to maintain it. Vinyl, man. Vinyl's the way to go.
Well,
I have to do nothing to it, it's great.
Yeah, maintenance-free works
Oh,
for
it's
me.
wonderful.
If you can get vinyl bushes, you're perfect.
Vinyl bushes, whatever it is,
Christmas trees.
make it vinyl. Just perfect, yes.
Well, there have been people that, we've said, yeah, you have to get a variance to do that. The process takes 2 to 3 months, yada, yada, you might not get the variance. And then in the past, we haven't regulated it being a fence. So we've said, some people plant some bushes for privacy, and we've had people plant a fence of hedges, basically. And it looks fine in most cases as long as it's maintained, but you still get that wall effect that I don't know if we really want to see in the front yards.
Oh, in the front yard. I gotcha.
So,
I can pretty much plant whatever I want in my front yard.
see, and then you get the people that'll say, oh, what do you think?
Not a
Tell
fence.
me I can't plant things in my garage.
I want to sit on my front porch and look at my bushes. Yeah.
So it's a tough call. So, are we still thinking regulated as a fence, or are we swaying back and
I don't know how you do it. That's,
Yeah, that could turn into a nightmare for you guys. I mean,
Isn't there
I think
another,
it should be
another
somewhere
thing you could
where
use, like, overgrowth and stuff like that? Isn't there something with that that's not considered a fence that is in the village code saying that you, and as far as maintaining your yard?
I mean, it has to be well kept, no matter what you plant.
And then define well kept. I mean, people have different definitions of that.
and you're going to get a ticket. You're going to get,
Can you see your house from the street? That's, a lot of people,
Bingo.
you can't see anything because it's all just weeds and garbage. I mean, I don't think you can regulate that. I think it's too difficult. I mean,
So the consensus is that a hedge is not a fence.
I think that's what we're sounding like, right?
I think it has to be.
I'm not quite there yet.
I know.
A row hedge.
Yeah, there you
It
go,
looks
a
like
row
a-
hedge. Okay, is there a term for it's a row hedge? If you have more than so many, I don't know, you can't do that. So,
Well, you
so many
could-
bushes per,
Per length.
it's just too much do you really want to have to go through and define all that? Just
You
say-
could do that, though.
It sounds dirty.
It's
Just,
going to be a
ugh,
headache, and there's
too
going
much.
to be a lot of complaints. And like I said, the problem is more so going to be that people are going to go ahead and look at it and see it, and then we're going to have to, decide if we're going to tell them you have to take it away.
Right.
I think if you regulate the height from the street view, I think that's, or you do the safety thing, I think that's,
Yeah, hit it at 3 or 4
I'm trying to
feet
keep
high.
it simple for you guys too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Mhm.
gets a little crazy. Let's worry about the actual fences.
Yep.
Because how many people, it's not something that I've noted, like I don't see it a lot. I can't say, oh, look at this
Right,
person's.
look for it now.
I'm gonna look for it now, but I don't think I can even think of one place that actually has it.
It was in my front yard before. I
Tore
took
it out.
Yeah.
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 Oak Lawn was big on it though.
Yes.
My grandparents lived there. Oak Lawn had them all over the place.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And a lot of places
They
still
were
do that.
boundary lines. They were boundary lines.
But there were also a few people in Oak Lawn that had them, and they were 7.5, 8 feet tall.
It's like a
And you
fort- it's like
didn't
a
know there was a
fortress.
house back there. You remember those, James?
Some of the older sections have it. I've seen that, yeah.
So for right now, I think I'll keep it as that we're not going to regulate the hedges or whatever landscaping gets planted. However, I will put in there that we want to make sure that hedges or plantings don't want to interfere with the line of sight. And I think we have that elsewhere in the code in section 3G for visibility. on-
Yeah, and would they be also regulated under a landscaping ordinance? Do we have anything like that in the village?
We do. We need to update that as well, so that might be something that we also put in that.
Yeah, so if they're allowed to have them in this one, if the other one steps in and says this is what you have to do, then,
Yeah. Okay.
So we have no regulation as far as height on shrubs?
It's going to be tough to regulate.
That's what I'm asking. We have nothing like that, so
No.
if they're gonna plant that, they could be 8, 10 feet tall for it.
Maybe we should look at some other villages and see what they've done.
don't go to one.
Don't go to Lawn, but I'm thinking more
Yeah.
of western suburbs, Hinsdale and stuff.
Some other people have.
where they're doing a lot of
I've
tear downs
looked
and
at a lot of
stuff.
other regulations, and it really is just gonna depend on where a village wants to go with it, because it really does go both ways. And the thing with, I think, Tinley Park is that it's hard to administer that type of code, because we have some existing, and again, if people go ahead and just plant, because they can plant on their property, then having to tell them just, do we,
It's politically, yeah.
you know, so I think we're all on the same page with wanting everything to look nice and to have better aesthetics. I think everyone can get on the same page with that part of it. And I think, you know, that the hedges might be more of a code enforcement issue if they get to be 10 feet tall or something. Maybe that's where we write something in the landscape code that says you'll see to the house or whatever it may be. So.
And I don't want to belabor this or make it longer, but when you consider safety issues of a fence, let's say surrounding a pool, a hedge certainly not qualifies that fence.
Good point.
Because, I don't know about you guys, but I can still actually crawl under a hedge and get through. It's tough, but I can do it. So, you know, you wouldn't want to use a hedge for a fence when there were concerns about safety.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay. I think that covers materials. Do we have any other comments on the material list here? We talked already about the chain link and wanting to get to the allowable side, except for the slats. And we want to add glass to that prohibited list. And
Mirrors, no mirrors. I wish I want.
that's glass and barbed wire right there. Anything else we want to add to allowable or
You could cover it.
we probably don't have to say bikes and bullets and all that, so. And then we put something in here about the finished side, so that it's facing outward toward the adjacent parcels or right of way. We said it shall not have sharp edges, and we talked about the color, being neutral and natural colors, and I'll work on defining what those may be, and we'll be giving some examples. Oh, here, I said in number 2, or number 1 and number 2 of materials, fences shall consist of materials that are found by the zoning administrator or their designee to be durable and weather resistant, shall be painted, rust-proof, or otherwise protected against damage or decay so as to prevent disorderly appearance. And then for number 2, all fences shall be maintained in good structurally sound repair and in a neat, clean, and presentable and attractive condition. So that kind of talks about that maintenance one that we had earlier.
I think that needs to be defined a little, looking at the fences in the neighborhood, or in the village, I think we need to define what is a sound repair, what is neat. Like, no loose slats, no missing panels, no,
Broken, yeah.
if it's broken, you have so much, how do you guys do that with if somebody doesn't fix their fence for a long time? Do you approach them saying, do you plan on fixing this? Do you, like,
The code compliance officers would go out and talk to them and send them a letter about the repair of the fence. If they don't hear anything back or there isn't any action taken within a certain amount of time, we'll probably send a citation. And
how much time do you know what that is? How much time? What's the letter sent?
I'm not sure. I'm guessing they usually give them at least 30 days or so. But
1 week.
They shouldn't give them, I mean, I think there should be defined how long you get. Isn't that fair? I mean, so you got 30 days to take some form of action and present an action plan to us.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
I don't know if that's best suited for this particular code. I want to leave that up to the code compliance officers.
Cool.
because
All right.
I think it might be different. And I can have them give me some of what they look for when we talk about the sound repair and neat condition and, you know, and I think we can better define. what
Okay.
that would be.
Under prohibited materials, can we add a 3?
Okay.
And the 3 would say, or other material not approved in 3 above.
Well, that's something that number 1 might cover, where it says fences shall consist of materials that are found by the zoning administrator or designate to be durable and water resistant. I could add another caveat in there that says in kind with the allowable materials, or, you know, keeping with that. Or I could just say in the allowable materials section, one more category that says or similar, with whatever would make you more comfortable. Because I think by default, if it didn't meet those allowable materials, it would be prohibited. And then we need a variance if it was something.
Then we would need a prohibited.
We got to change that one under height too, top of rails to top of pickets or whatever. We talked about that.
Pickets or panels, yeah.
Pickets or panels or whatever we call them.
I'm gonna add a graphic to that too, so you can see a couple different fence types.
Just pointing it out, so I'm just making sure.
Yeah, thank you. All right, anything else with materials? Okay. All right, so all your patience with this. Here's a different slide showing some other fences. Do we have any, there's your hedgerow there in the.
Welcome to Ireland.
Do we have
There you
any
go.
other comments on these fences here? Anything we like, dislike, want to make sure we do or do not do?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, the only thing wrong with the hedgerow is in the front yard. That's-
It's a hedgerow, too. Holy smoke.
Hmm?
They really built that.
That would be very impressive if someone did that. So, quite a nice hedge there.
So a number,
With a big enough lot, that's true.
the one in the middle at the top with the spikes, is that allowable?
You know,
The points?
it's debatable because we say no sharp edges. So I think we'd have to, I would say we would request that they maybe use a different top and see
Okay.
what they do from there. We would possibly want to see a sample of it to make sure that it's not something that, someone's going to get hurt on. But we also don't necessarily think people are going to be climbing fences. So, that would be the approach I would take, at least, is I would call the homeowner that's proposing that type of fence and ask if they can go with a different style just because of that concern for safety. And maybe that's the reason they want it in the first place. So
Good point.
if staff has a concern about it, we have the ability to bring it to the zoning board of appeals. I think if we called that a sharp edge, they could ask for a variance to that, and then the zoning board and the village board would have to weigh in on it.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
I don't think they'd want to go through that hassle, and they might choose to change it before that process.
And we don't have a lot of estates like that and stuff, so.
Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts about these fences? How do you like the metal one in the middle bottom?
Not crazy
It's
about it.
aluminum.
In the right place, it would probably be very cool.
I think that it's a steel fence.
Oh, is it?
It might be galvanized.
I was Googling galvanized steel and something like that popped up, and that's why I put that caveat for open style fencing aluminum, so that we don't end up with this sort of panels. But I can further define that if you would like to specifically not see that. It'd be cool for some commercial uses, maybe.
Could be, yeah.
Rodeo.
Or a farm out in Frankfurt.
A rodeo.
Correct, that's what I thought of as a horse farm immediately. Yeah.
Okay, go on to the next one. Definitions, we want to open to the definition section. I included the current code along with what our proposed changes are. We talked about the definition for fence already. We talked about the landscape fences. But we have new definitions for clear vision triangle, fence height, solid or privacy fence, open or decorative fence, living fence, lot, corner through lot, flag lot, interior through lot, reverse corner lot, through lot, front or primary front yard, rear yard, secondary front yard, and side yard. And these are all just to correspond nicely to that graphic that I provided, showing all the different colors of the yards. And there's a couple areas here that I highlighted that I especially talked about. First of all, is there anything that read through these stood out to you? Or any definitions? Okay. Do you want me to go through and read each one, or just skip to the highlighted sections?
Skip to the highlighted section.
Alright. We already talked about the fence, so let's skip that one. So, definition for corner through lot. And this is, go back to the PowerPoint real quick. This is like if the two corner lots on the very far right of the screen were one lot. So, you know, I've got the through lot right there. So just imagine if those two corner lots were combined and it was not only through to both of the streets on the north and the south side of the image here, but also on the east side of the image. So you kind of have three streets surrounding you is what a corner through lot is. So you've got street on three sides. So you're all the way through the block and you're on the corner of all those streets. We do have a couple of these in town, not very many though. And the highlighted portion of this definition says, all such lot lines shall be considered front lot lines. So we would consider all three sides of that front yard, which is what's shown in this diagram here, because we have the orange yards and the yellow yards along that side. But in some cases, it's problematic because then you end up with your rear yard being a really small sliver where you see those pink side yards, rather than the blue rear yards that you see there. So let me just show you that here with the mouse.
Would those be primary or secondary?
Well, that's tricky too because, so you end up with front yard, and front yard. And because we're still saying that the shortest dimension is the primary, you still end up with the same thing here where you have primary and primary because it's one big long through lot. And then you end up with a big long secondary yard on this side. So just again, imagine that this is just one lot all combined here.
Mhm.
And then you end up with this being your rear yard along here. And maybe your house is somewhere in the middle here. So it can end up for having a really narrow or small rear yard, the way this is laid out. And we would regulate the fence location all three sides of this where the street is, rather than saying if this person has their fence all the way to here, say that this is 80th Avenue and they have a fence all the way to here or something, then this person would not be able to put their fence there without a variance essentially. So we're treating all sides around the street as a front yard. Does that make sense? You know, we've got a lot of factors.
Well, it depends on where the house is and where the house is situated in the front of the houses, I would suppose, to some extent.
So would you be comfortable with including this line that says all such lot lines shall be considered front lot lines? And if we have a unique situation where maybe it doesn't match up with someone else's fence, that comes to the zoning board of the village?
I
That
think
way
so.
we're protecting the area in front of all those right of ways.
We can address the uniqueness
Yeah,
of
and
it.
it gives
at
them the
that
right
time.
to address it then, yeah.
Okay.
I thought.
And then the next one that I highlighted is for the regular through lot, and that's also known as a double frontage lot because again, you've got the two streets, and that's the one shown on this diagram here is through lot, and you've got front yards on both sides. So you want to regulate both of those as front lot lines. The issue with this is those properties along 80th Avenue or along other major streets where it goes straight through because they have a front street and then they have another street at the back of them. And that would change how this is regulated for those types of lots. So they would not automatically be allowed to just put their fence right on their
On the rear section, you mean?
rear
Yeah.
yard lot line. So this is a little problematic. And if we want to not include this as being a front lot line, then we probably have to go back and change the other one to give it more flexibility. Because you kind of have to think of these two lot situations as the same.
I think there should be both front lot lines. I think that's wording's proper for that.
What can,
So are you picturing like with that, are you picturing the house to be like in the middle? Or are you on one side like near There's one on Ridgeland right by me that actually has, their house is on, was it 69th Avenue? But then the lot goes all the way through to Ridgeland. And they, I mean, so that's, the whole back portion is basically their back. But they stop it. They stop their fence way short of the property line. So,
Wait a minute.
I mean, way short of the setback.
Click on the picture, that's 69th Avenue all the way to Ridgeland?
There's a brown,
That's a big lot.
Yeah,
yeah, there's a
69th
brown
Avenue.
house, like a brown cedar, I guess, house.
You're dragging it across Oak Park.
Right, I thought the garage, I didn't know who the garage belonged to at first. So I was like, what house belongs to this? And the
Is it
garage
definitely on Ridgeland?
The garage is on Ridgeland.
Okay, so where's the house
The
actually?
house is on 69th Avenue. It goes, they have a detached garage and an attached
That's a mile
garage.
side lot.
65th
It's a
Avenue,
huge
maybe?
lot.
Maybe
No, it's-
65th?
Wait. Yes, right behind Ridgeland. the
Yeah,
street
65th,
right
I know what one you're talking about
Yeah,
now,
it's,
yeah.
what is Ridgeland, 64? Yeah, so
Yeah,
65th.
65th,
Sorry,
yeah.
69th, I was wrong. Yeah, so you got, yeah, it's huge. But
It
they,
is, yeah. it
if they
is.
butted that up right up to like either Ridgeland or 69th Avenue, it would look ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean,
Well, like I said, the problem's gonna be those people that already have it along like 80th Avenue and everywhere else where it goes all the way through. So.
but aren't we considering that we're gonna allow those people to have those fences on 80th Avenue?
Well, if they're a through lot, as it goes
Trying
through
to
street to
picture
street,
those.
then it technically, as it's written now, with that highlighted section, they would technically have the front yard setback along 80th Avenue and along whatever.
So currently on 80th right there, they're all butted up to the rear. Is
They're
that-
currently
the
thought of
rear-
as a rear yard.
Rear yard, okay.
So this would change and essentially make everyone have 25 feet from the side.
Well, yeah,
Which
but
is
couldn't
gonna
that
be
come,
problematic, but
couldn't
it's
that come to a hearing?
correct.
I mean, they always have the option of coming to a hearing, right? So when you go to them and or they come to you and then you tell them, no, they can't do that, they're gonna come here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Problem is when
I
they go to
mean,
replace what's already there, they have to change it.
I think what we could consider doing is writing in the other portion of the code, maybe that administratively can allow double frontage lots or these through lots to have fences along the lot line based on the character of the street that it's adjacent to.
The adjacent
Yeah.
properties, right?
Yeah.
If the back of the houses are on the street, like 80th Avenue and 84th Avenue, it says things, and then you get this through lot, well, that fence should be able to line up with the back fences of those other properties.
Those didn't even come to mind when I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the
Double
things that
frontage.
I think of protecting is the situation where we've got a couple houses throughout 171st Street that are flipped the wrong way than the whole rest of the neighborhood.
Mhm.
Have you noticed that? And their backyard will actually go into the subdivision's front yard, and their fence will essentially block where we would have put a sidewalk or something. And it's just that one person back in the day that didn't want to sell to the subdivision developer, we haven't
Mhm.
been there ever since. And we end up with, in the middle of a neighborhood street, this, flip-flop lot with a fence right in the middle, and it's sort of not maintaining the character. I don't have a whole lot of situations like that, but had that person been required to have the same kind of setback, we wouldn't have ended up with a fence into the other people's front yards, I guess.
Got a few of those over on Sayre over there, between Harlem and Sayre, are 300-foot lots too. Not that I want to pay to fence that lot, but that's going to be an issue when that starts to develop differently.
Okay, so maybe keep this and put in a caveat for administrative approval based on the lots. At least protecting the future blue lot fences. Okay. And a couple more definitions here. On the last page, we don't have anything highlighted, but I just wanted to clarify again the idea of the primary and the secondary front yard versus how we currently have it by address and non-address side. And this isn't going to be perfect, but I think it'll be better than going by the address. And it does say when in situations where the dimensions are similar or unclear, the zoning administrator or the designee will determine the primary front yard or the secondary front yard. So we do have some room in there to be able to interpret when, if maybe it's a square lot. We have to section that should go. So I think that's about all I have. Fences and the house and all these pictures. And we have some administrative variances for the situation here that we'd be adding with aligning the home with, or the fence with the existing home. That's appropriate. And we saw the fun picture. And we went through this draft text amendment. Is there anything else you'd like me to go through with this? Are you comfortable? And there's a couple things on the first page that we can go through. There's a table that hopefully clarifies exactly where fences are allowed for the different lot types. And it also talks about what a permit is required. One thing I did want to touch on is we haven't really said in the past what kind of repairs can be done to fences and what triggers the need for a permit. And it says repairs of not more than 1 8-foot section per year on a legally permitted fence, except for meeting the permit, you can go ahead and just do that. And it says if you have a fence that's 2 feet in height or less, you can go ahead and build that because that's really not acting as a fence per se. Some people might want that, around their garden if they put like a cute little wire fence around the garden. And then that we don't regulate by permit the planting of living fences. Okay with those? All right. And there is one other section, sorry guys, non-conforming fences. This is where we talk about where we have legal and illegal fences.
What page?
This is 5 of 10, the draft text amendment. This is section 5 on there, so in the middle of the page. And we said fences existing at the time of the enactment of this section or any amendment thereto or at the time of annexation shall be regarded as non-conforming fences, either legal or illegal. Legal non-conforming fences are the fences that were constructed with a permit that we have on file at the village. Minor ordinary repairs and maintenance not exceeding a repair of 1 8-foot wide section of fencing per year may be completed on such fence. Non-conforming fences should not be changed or altered in any manner that would increase the degree of its non-conformity or structurally alter it to prolong its useful life. So if someone has a front yard fence that was permitted, they can make a minor repair to it. They cannot do anything to really make it live forever and ever because the intent is that we want it to someday meet the code. However, if they have a variance, they have the right to keep the fence however long they would like because they have a legal document allowing it at that location until such document can be rescinded.
You said that's a permit and variance are two different
They're
things.
two different things. And as we've seen too, there are some fences that are not in the right place or not with the right materials or at the right height. They did not get a permit. And we've seen some of our past variances that there's no record of how the fence came to be, and so we don't have a permit on file. And so someone may have erected it without getting any village approvals. And those are considered illegal non-conforming fences. And they shall be immediately removed by the property owner or a variance must be obtained. So they'll have the option to take it down, make it right, put it where it belongs, and meet the current codes once we find out about it. Or they can ask for a variance to keep it, and if they have an argument that they should be able to keep it, that should be something we soon have on a case-by-case basis, in my opinion.
And I think that, again, I've said this before, but I think not today, but we need to kind of all be on the same page with just because it was there before and it wasn't the person's fault who bought the house without knowing that the fence was illegal, non-conforming, they still should have to go back and meet code. I mean, the fence is in the wrong place, it falls down, they want to replace it, and they come in to get their permit, and they find out that it's illegal, non-conforming. Well, we tried to come up with something as part of the closing process, but your lawyer's supposed to do that. The lawyers are supposed to do that, right? But they don't. So I don't know. And we've talked about like the code compliance officer being part of that and saying, hey, you have an illegal non-conforming fence in this yard when they go to buy it. Is that doable or not? I mean, because that's, we were trying to solve ways, find ways to solve that
Right,
problem.
we're talking about disclosure.
We
Yeah,
don't,
but it's so hard to get that
we don't
disclosure,
have the
right?
staff, I think, to go out
Yeah.
and do that, but we definitely can look through the records if someone requests to know. Like, I know when I was looking to buy a house, I made sure to look at the building permit records just because I thought that's
Well,
what.
it's you, though.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what you
you,
do.
I know, exactly.
You're one of
And I
them.
found out that my fence is 2 feet on, 2 feet in the wrong direction, but anyway. So, you know, we definitely can help people that ask, but we can't always help people that don't ask.
Right.
Until they come in and ask for a permit to replace something, we don't have directly able to review it. So, like I said, we would want them to remove it or ask for a variance. And by removing it, they could then replace it where it's allowed.
Yeah.
And
I think
Now,
we gotta-
properties that annex into the village, we're kind of stuck with them for the time being, aren't we? Until they go to remove or replace, or,
It depends. We can have annexation agreements that talk about things they have to do, you know, to be accepted by the village in a way. We would obviously want people to connect to water and sewer when possible. That's a requirement, if they have close enough connection points. So we require things like that. If there's something particularly unsightly in our code, of course, we want to ask them to bring it up to compliance. And if we notice there's an 8-foot-tall barbed wire electric fence in the front yard, I'm sure we would want that to be removed so it can be a.
you guys are no fun.
Look like everyone else's fences. That's certainly something we can request as part of that process.
Any other questions or comments, guys? Everybody good? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to say anything? No? Well, I hope that at least our input helped a little bit with what you guys have to do. The task is fairly monumental, I think. It's just a lot, it boggles my mind how specific things have to be on your guys' part. And I think you guys are doing a great job, so keep it up. Guess we move for the good of the order. Are there any issues that we need to discuss for the good of the order? You said you had something, right?
Yep, we don't have any items for your next meeting on the 20th, 2 weeks, so Barb will be sending out a cancellation notice, but just so you know, you can get your calendars, soccer practice can go late.
So I guess I could tell you now that I'm out of town on the 28th, I won't be.
Okay,
Okay.
great, have a great trip. So, don't need to be here in 2 weeks. If you would like to watch the plan commission meeting or attend the plan commission meeting where we're talking about fences, you're welcome to do so as well. If you'd like for me to send you the packets for those meetings, just let me or Barb know, and we have put you on the list. They're also on the village website if you'd like to put them there. And I just want to thank you all for your participation. I know this isn't the most exciting topic to talk about, but it's very helpful to go through the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good job, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's-
Is there any
Becoming
public
very
comment? Seeing that there are none, let the record reflect that there is no comments from the public. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, meeting's adjourned.
Good job, Mr. Chairman.